Jack Smith, former special prosecutor of Donald Trump, had his day being prosecuted by the House Oversight Committee today. Here's Jim Jordan of Ohio talking with America's Javert, Jack Smith, cut number 2.
You and Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you.
The gentleman yields back. Mr. Smith, is Cassidy Hutchinson a liar? She was their star witness, January 6th committee, their star witness in one of those staged and choreographed hearings they paid the former president of ABC News to put together. She was, in fact, the only witness at this special prime-time hearing, Tuesday, June 28, 2022, 8 o'clock in the evening, and she told some stories. I mean, these were some stories. She talked about President lunged across the back seat, grabbed the steering wheel, tried to drive the car to the Capitol. And I just want to know, you think she was lying?
Chairman Jordan, my assessment of that particular issue is that with respect to the testimony about someone the president lunging towards the driver, my recollection of her testimony about that is that it was secondhand. She said she'd heard that from somebody.
You familiar with the name Tony Ornato?
I'm sorry?
You familiar with the name Tony Ornato?
Yes.
White House Deputy Chief of Operations, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, right? You remember what he said about it?
As I sit here right now, I do not.
Yeah, he said it didn't happen. How about Bobby Engel? You familiar with that name?
Yes, I am.
Secret Service agent who was actually in the car that day. You know what he said? He said it didn't happen. And they both said the first time they ever heard this story was when Ms. Hutchinson testified in the primetime hearing as their star witness of the January 6th committee. By the way, did you ever confirm her testimony about this particular incident?
We conducted, as I said before, our own independent investigation of all aspects of the case that we thought was relevant. We, attorneys from my office...
Did you ever confirm it? That's a simple question.
Well, we interviewed her, I should say, attorneys in my office before.
Did you ever confirm the president leaping across the seat, grabbing the steering wheel, this whole concoction she brought up in the January 6th hearing? Did you ever confirm that?
Right. We interviewed another firsthand witness who was in the car who did not confirm that had happened, but also...
In your deposition to the committee last month, Mr. Smith, you said this: my recollection with Ms. Hutchinson was a number of the things that she gave evidence on were secondhand hearsay. You remember making that statement to us last month in the deposition?
I did, and I was referring particularly to what we're talking about now.
Yeah, and you also said Ms. Hutchinson, regarding this particular claim, was a second or even third-hand witness. We asked you, if you were a defense attorney, how would you handle cross-examining her if she was on the witness stand? And you said, if I were a defense attorney and Ms. Hutchinson were a witness, the first thing I would do was seek to preclude her testimony because it was hearsay. You remember saying all that?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
That's correct, right? Were you going to put her on the witness stand if you ever got to trial?
We had not made final determinations as to who we were going to call as a witness. We had a large...
You were still considering her?
We had a large choice of witnesses in this case.
Are you familiar with what Washington Post reporters Carol Leonnig and Aaron Davis said in their book? They did this book, 300-some pages book on chronicling the whole investigation at the Justice Department. And here's what they said on page 310. They said, Jack Smith had wondered whether some of Hutchinson's claims might be relied upon at trial. Still, at one point, Smith told the elections team he wasn't ready to give up on Hutchinson's account. Ultimately, however, Trump administration officials uniformly, fiercely disputed her accounts under oath. Prosecutors on your team told Smith they wouldn't want to use Hutchinson as a witness in court, and Smith agreed. Are Carol Leonnig and Aaron Davis, who wrote this, are they lying?
My recollection is that I certainly had not made any final determinations about who we were going to call.
And that's the point. That is the point. The fact that they used her.
That is, except Brandon Gill, congressman from Texas, made more points, cut number 3.
Yes, sir, we did.
Yes, you did. And the subpoena covered the time period between November 2020 and January 2021. Is that right?
I'm sorry, sir. Could you say that again?
We're not going to delay like this. The subpoena covered the time period between November of 2020 and January 2021. How many days after Kevin McCarthy was sworn in as Speaker did you subpoena his records?
I don't recall, but those two things had nothing to
It
do
was
with one.
16 days after becoming the highest ranking Republican in the House of Representatives. You subpoenaed his toll records. Do you agree that that might reasonably be considered a violation of the speech or debate clause?
I do not, and I want to be clear that the toll
You were
records...
collecting months' worth of phone data on the Republican Speaker of the House, the leader of the opposition, right after he got sworn in as Speaker, all around the time of a major vote. That sounds like a flagrant violation of the speech or debate clause to me, and I think most people agree with me. And Speaker McCarthy had no recourse, did he? Because you issued a non-disclosure order ensuring that neither he nor any of the American people knew about these subpoenas. Is that right?
The toll record, the non-content toll record subpoenas, we did secure non-disclosure orders for those subpoenas.
You did. And let me ask you, Mr. Smith, at the time you secured those non-disclosure orders, was Speaker McCarthy a flight risk?
The non-disclosure order was based on concerns about...
Was Speaker McCarthy a flight risk?
He was not.
He was not. Then why did your non-disclosure order refer to him as a flight risk? It says right here, the court finds reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure will result in flight from prosecution.
Sir, when securing a non-disclosure order, the risks don't have to be
You
associated...
think that the Speaker of the House is a flight risk?
The question?
No, this is not your time. This is my time. You think the Speaker of the House is a flight risk? You think he's going to hop on a plane and leave the country?
No, what I was trying to explain is with respect to a non-disclosure order, the risks aren't necessarily associated with the subscriber to the phone. They're the risks to the investigation.
I think that you were using, this was clearly in reference to Speaker McCarthy, and you were using clearly false information to secure a non-disclosure order to hide from Speaker McCarthy and from the American people the fact that you were spying on his toll records. But I've got more, so let's move on. In May of 2023, you also issued subpoenas for toll records of 9 U.S. senators and an additional representative. Is that right?
In May of 23, we did issue...
You did, and there were non-disclosure orders in conjunction with those subpoenas as well, right?
That's correct, consistent with department policy and
Right.
the law.
So again, nobody would know what you were doing. The senators would, and the representatives would, and the American people wouldn't know what you were doing. Is that right?
The toll records that we secured and the non-disclosure orders were consistent with policy and consistent...
And you knew whenever you were doing that there was a risk you were violating the speech or debate clause. Is that right?
The toll record subpoenas that we secured were with the concurrence of the public integrity.
Your own analysis says that you knew there was a risk you were violating the speech or debate clause. I have it right here. This is an email from John Keller at Public Integrity Section to your team. As you are aware, quote, as you are aware, there is some litigation risk regarding whether compelled disclosure of toll records of a member's legislative calls violates the speech or debate clause in the D.C. Circuit. That's from your own analysis right there. So you did know, didn't you?
Sir, with respect to the item you just put up on the screen, the last sentence states...
we're going to get to the last sentence.
Okay.
We're going to get to the last sentence. And you cite case law in here, quote, the bar on compelled disclosure is absolute. Is that right? Or do you think that you didn't have to abide by that precedent?
To be clear, this statement is not from my office. This is the statement of public
This is your justification for those subpoenas and NDOs that you ordered. This was part of your analysis. It's a cursory analysis. I think it's worth noting. But let's get to that last sentence then. Quote, given my understanding of the low likelihood that any of the members listed below would be charged, the litigation risk should be minimal here. In other words, you're using a novel legal theory, which you knew was novel, has never been tested by any court. You're not charging any of these members. Nobody's going to know about it because you issued NDOs. Nobody's going to sue about it, so sue this. So who cares? We're going to do it anyways. I mean, you walked all over the Constitution throughout this entire process.
Mr. Chairman, the gentleman's time has
spying
expired.
on members of Congress, and you know it. It's absolutely disgraceful.
It is absolutely disgraceful. It goes on and on. Jack Smith was a rogue prosecutor who did great damage to the Constitution and the political process of the United States. He is the Javert from Les Mis. He ought never to prosecute anyone again. He ought never to have prosecuted President Trump. He was unconstitutionally appointed, as was held by the district court in Florida, never appealed because the case was dismissed after President Trump won re-election. Jack Smith and his team, a disgrace to justice in the United States. Noah Rothman is with National Review, where he's a senior writer. Noah, I'm going to go from least important to most important subjects today. First, the Oscar nominations came out. I want to run through the list of the best pictures and just get a yes or no from you whether you've gone to them. Frankenstein?
No.
Hamnet?
No.
The Secret Agent?
No.
Sentimental Value?
No. You might be detecting a trend.
Sinners?
Nope.
F1?
Believe it or not, no.
Train Dreams?
Want to take a guess?
Train Dreams?
Nope.
Marty Supreme?
Sadly, no. And I kind of do want to see that one.
One Battle After Another?
Nope.
And finally, Begonia.
A big no.
So
Across
you're
the
0
board.
for 10.
100%.
You're 0 for 10. I've got
Now
a lot
ask
of good
me if
guests
I've
today.
seen the same television show I've watched 10 times with my wife on the couch at 9 o'clock. I can
I know,
tell
but
you
I
everything
just
that
think-
happens in that one show.
I don't think you're the problem. I think Hollywood's the problem, and I'm gonna test it out. I have you, Eliana Johnson, Jim Talent, Josh Kroshauer, and Jim Garrity to ask today, and me. And I only saw F1, Formula One.
I want to see Sinners. I want to see F1, and I do want to see Marty Supreme. But the rest of them.
But you haven't. This is why the movie business.
I'm culturally illiterate. It really is on me to a certain extent.
Well, no, it's not. You're on every day on the editor. You're right about stuff. They have not drawn you into the theater. That's the problem. You make
It is their
taste.
fault.
All right, now second big issue, Greenland and the deal. I think it's significant, but a lot of people want to say it's nothing. I think, and I'm going to tell you this before you answer, I think they're putting their dislike of the president ahead of the realities of the Golden Dome. What do you think?
Yeah, well, listen, it's not nothing, but it does not seem to be what the president retailed yesterday. He was stipulating that and attributing to Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, that they had secured some deal for functional sovereignty to be ceded in parts of Greenland to the United States. And I was on with the Times of London today. I've been surveying international media for a while today, and Mark Rutte denies it. The Danish government strenuously insists that they had not and would not agree to such a deal. Nobody can confirm that. So we're left with mineral rights and new basing and the deployment of anti-missile technology, all of which is very important and very valuable, but I struggle to see how we couldn't have gotten that through a process that was much less hostile, much more deliberative, and not so injurious to America's reputation with its allies in Europe.
Yeah, I like the process. I don't mind injuring allies in Europe because I don't think we did. I think their press people.
Well,
did.
then we do agree, Hugh. You're not saying you like being hostile to Europe for hostility's sake. You're saying that that's just simply not the case.
Yeah, I think it's simply not the case. I think that they've got a lot of people who are wringing their hands, and in fact, they're glad they don't have to get into a fight with Trump because Trump would have won. And he just did it the developer way. Developers are not new to me. I've represented them my whole life. That's the developer way. Now, the most important thing. Do you believe President Trump is going to order a strike on Iran, and should he?
I think he should. I think the odds are better than even that he will. I wrote about this today. The president said, at the Davos conference during the peace board presentation, that they want to talk. Iran wants to talk, and we're going to talk to them. And we've heard that before, but it doesn't come to anything. And it does strike me as a feint, given the amount of hardware that we're sending into the Gulf region. We have the Abraham Lincoln, which is deployed from the Western Pacific. It's going to be joined now, apparently, by the George H.W. Bush, which left Norfolk on its way, allegedly, to the Mediterranean. So we're going to have a lot of hardware, as well as support aircraft and combat aircraft like F-15s. So if there are talks, then we're going to have a lot of hardware to back it up. But what is there to talk about?
Yeah, I've been
The
cautioned
Iranian
by
nuclear
people,
program,
by the way, that the Bush might be out on sea trials and might not be going to the Med. So I want to make sure that people understand there's questions about that. I want them to strike simply because a punitive strike. They're not going to get regime change. But we ought to set up a standard. If you murder 15,000 of your own people with machine guns in the street, you're going to get hit by us because we're the West. That's why I don't think we'll get regime change. But I think we ought to set a standard. What's your argument for doing it?
well, I'm typically leery of messaging strikes like that. I think they should have a strategic rationale as well as a tactical rationale, and I think these strikes would have a strategic and tactical rationale. Beyond that, the president has a self-set red line. He has said many, many times that one of Barack Obama's biggest mistakes was not following through in his self-set red line in 2012, and I think Barack Obama might even agree with the president on that assessment. So he is obligated, in my view, to do what the Wall Street Journal observed when it published Aragachi's op-ed this week, that to make note of the fact that Iran is thumbing its nose at Trump's red line, and it's incumbent on him to enforce it or sacrifice his prestige and America's in the process. But I don't think that this is just a messaging strike. If we were to attack, besiege IRGC installations, the objective there would be to weaken the regime and reignite the protest movement, which is part of America's overall grand strategy, which is collapsing this regime.
Well, I think the regime's going to collapse on its own. I would blow up Karg Island, but I am not a military targeteer, and there are people who study where their weakest points are. I don't know what the target list is.
Wouldn't that roil the oil markets? Wouldn't that terrify the administration as well? That's what I'm afraid of.
But they're $60 a barrel right now. And we've got new sources coming on in the United States from Venezuela and from Canada. And I don't think they sell to China primarily. The one response I got from, again, an unnamed person was that you could invite China in to Iran if you did that because they rely so much on Iranian oil, and that's a major escalation with China. I understand. That's why I'm not coming up with it, but I do believe in a purely punitive strike when a non-nuclear nation mows down 15,000 people. You know, the American equivalent, if we had a real fascist, a real authoritarian that did something like this, that would be 60 to 70,000 people. It's astonishing how many people they killed.
Yeah, no, it's a massacre, an unspeakable massacre, and it may be ongoing. We just don't have a lot of information still coming out of Iran, but I struggle to see how these protests that were so vehement last week have been completely pacified. So the atrocities are ongoing. But back to Karg Island, there are side effects, unintended consequences that can result from the decimation of the Iranian oil program. If we're taking Venezuela offline and we take Iran offline, and that is the goal of our strategy. If we collapse this regime, we don't want a regime that's selling oil and energy products to our competitors like Russia and China. Eventually, China will be squeezed and starved. If our policy is successful, it will be starved of energy. So we should be contemplating what that looks like and not afraid of the outcomes of what that looks like, because that is the objective here, is it not? We want.
Well, I don't think they'd be starved of energy. I think they would have to buy energy on the white market, and that the price of oil might increase marginally, and it might help our balance of trade. And there's no reason to think that it will become Japan 1937 to 1941.
That's the big fear, right?
Yeah, that
we shorten the window of opportunity for action in the South China Sea.
And there is no need for that because China, a war would be China's choice, and they have not done the things. They're not ready to go to war with us, and they're not ready to take Taiwan, no matter how many demonstrations they have. But Noah Rothman, I'm glad that you are 0 for 10 because it can't get any worse today for Hollywood. Thank you, Noah. Going into the close, half hour before markets close today, the Dow Jones is up 0.58%. The S&P is up 0.42%. And the NASDAQ is up about 0.75 of a point, 0.74%. Most important for those of you who are looking for a home, and I'm going to talk to you about andrewandtodd.com here. Most important for you, the 10-year Treasury is down 22/30 seconds to 4.2%, which is good. It still means you're going to be in the sixes, almost certainly. You can buy down points. That's a process that Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian will walk you through. They are with Union Home Mortgage. They're a bank. They actually underwrite your loan. So if you want to buy a house with a mortgage from andrewandtodd.com. 888-888-1172. They do help you figure out what's best for you. They don't upsell you. They want you to get as much house as you can, but be comfortable with your payment. You do not want to be house poor. You want to put down the right amount of money. You want to get the best loan you can. And I really don't think the Fed is in a hurry to drop rates enough that you want to wait around. Kind of a buyer's market with inventory back up in some places that are hard to find a home. So whether or not you get an extra quarter of a point off your 30-year mortgage, not really worth waiting if you found the home that you want to move in. Call Andrew and Todd at 888-888-1172. Now remember, half of their business, they are a bank, is refinancing loans. And some of you have got a 3% loan, maybe even a 2.78% loan in your hand, and you never want to give it up, but you're not looking at the total cost of the money you have borrowed over the course of your last many years. You got a car payment. You might have student debt. You might have credit cards. There's always an argument to at least run the numbers to see whether or not giving up your beautiful 3% loan for a 6% loan, getting the money out of your house to pay off your car, your student loan, and your credit cards makes sense. That's math. Andrew and Todd do the math for you. If you're a veteran and you don't want to put any money down, they also do that. If you're a first-time home buyer, they are indispensable, 888-888-1172. If you're thinking about refinancing to do that, call them on that. And if you're a senior citizen, 62 years and older, living in the house, and you've paid it off, you want to get some of that equity out to use on your grandkids or to use on fixing up the house or to make sure you got a little extra in the budget every month, you can call andrewandtodd.com. They do reverse mortgages for seniors. You have to be 62 years and older and living in your house, and you'll be glad you did. They'll take the time. They've served thousands of my customers. They did the mortgage for the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I when we moved back to D.C. They did the mortgage for Dwayne. They've done the mortgage for thousands of you. They've refinanced thousands of you. They've taken care of my kids as well. And it's not that we get special deals. Nobody gets special deals. There are no special deals. The mortgage market is a national market. So you got to deal with a national lender. That's Union Home Mortgage. Let them underwrite your loan. 888-888-1172. I am in the Relief Factor studio. I did not go up the hill today because, as I'll play later in the show, I was on Fox and Friends early this morning, very early this morning. When I'm in California, I'm on Fox and Friends, deduct 3 hours. So I was on at 6:30 in the morning, East Coast time, and I got up and got to the studio at 3:30 in the morning. I'm used to that because I used to do morning drive in California, which meant doing that every day. But nevertheless, I went back to bed when I got home, and I did not go up the implacable hill today. But I still take my Relief Factor every day, every single day. I carry in curcumin and resveratrol omega, whether or not I go up the hill or go for distance at the beach or whatever I do. And the reason is when I do go up the hill tomorrow, it won't feel bad. Now, a lot of you are about to be shoveling snow. And shoveling snow is the all-time number one indicator of bad backs and aches and pains that you have not had before, even more than gym, even more than marathons, even more than half marathons. You know what's coming. But when you shovel snow, people are just asking to throw their back out. That's why you should get your Relief Factor now in the mail, on the way, before the snowstorm hits, and it's coming. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. Don't wait another day. Head over there and get your Relief Factor. We got a lot of J.D. Vance coming up after I talk to Eliana Johnson. I do want to give you a little bit of J.D. Vance in Toledo earlier today, cut number 13.
We are 1 year in to raising wages for workers instead of declining wages for workers. We're 1 year in to $18 trillion of new investment for the United States of America instead of investment going to every other country but the United States of America. We're 1 year in to getting illegal aliens out of our country so that American homes can go to American citizens, which is exactly where they ought to go. And we are.
And why is he doing 1 year in? Because he's 1 year and 1 day in. And why is he in Toledo? Because Toledo serves Michigan, the Detroit market. The key demo is Detroit and the outer burbs of Detroit to keep Michigan in play. So when you serve Toledo, you take care of the base and you pick up Michigan. For the first time, I don't know, in years, I've missed 2 commentary podcasts back to back. So my next guest, Eliana Y. Johnson, who's a regular contributor to commentary. I haven't heard her voice in 3 days. Eliana is also the editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon, which you ought to be reading every morning at freebeacon.com. Eliana, 3 parts to today's interview. Part number 1, 10 yes or no questions, because the Oscar list came out. Number 1, have you seen Frankenstein?
Hugh, I'll spare you time. I haven't seen anything.
You're
I've
0
seen
for 10?
I make up for my 0 for 10 by having seen the SpongeBob movie 3 times with my 4-year-old, okay? That's about it.
Okay, I'll make it different. Have you heard of the following movie? Frankenstein,
Yes.
Hamnet,
No, never heard of it.
The Secret Agent,
Heard of it.
Sentimental Value,
Never heard of it.
Sinners,
Heard of it.
F1,
Never heard of it.
Train Dreams,
Never heard of it.
Marty Supreme.
Heard of it for sure. My colleague John Podhoretz gave it a rave review. We did talk about that one on the podcast.
Okay, One Battle After Another,
No,
and Begonia.
no.
How bad is Hollywood marketing when you haven't even heard of 6 of the 10 best pictures of the year?
I mean, Hugh, the one movie I will say that I have to say, I can't even tell you if it was this year was the Bob Dylan movie. Was that
I
this
saw the
year?
Bob Dylan too. That was 2 years
That's
ago.
it.
The
Only movie that I've seen in the theater in recent memory.
You're too,
but my
the kids
husband
are
was
too
just,
young for Zootopia? Is that the problem?
A little bit young. I've been trying to nudge my daughter there, and she's been saying, no, I want to go back to SpongeBob. And I did look it up, and it said it's more like a 6, 7, 8-year-old movie.
Don't do it.
You know.
No, I took 2 3-year-olds to it. Do not do it. Do not do it.
Yeah.
All right, next. 3 films focused on Gaza war and hostage crisis nominated for Oscars. Israel's Butcher Stain, Children No More, Where and Are Gone, and then one called The Voice of Hind Rajab about the death of a 5-year-old Palestinian. Do you want to bet which wins?
Oh, can all 3 walk away with awards? Because I think that's what would happen if the Oscars could do it. And I look forward to the demonstrative protests by the winners while they're up on stage, and the absolute silence on the butchery of the Iranian regime.
Yeah, 15,000. I'm coming to that. In fact, I'll reverse order my questions because you brought it up. Should President Trump strike as a purely punitive measure? I do not have hopes for regime change. I don't want a bombing campaign. I just want to strike them because you shouldn't mow down 15,000 of your people. And will he strike?
Well, I think he should strike in an effort for regime change in Iran, not simply as a punitive measure, but because it's in the American interests. And for about the past 10 days, Hugh, I've believed strongly that the window for American action is not closed. In the days after President Trump issued his threats and the Iranian leaders were sort of thumbing their noses at him, there were a lot of people saying he drew a red line, he's not enforcing it. That may yet turn out to be true, but I think we're working on a bit of a longer timeline. There's an F-15 squadron and aerial refueling tankers heading to the region. And I tend to think President Trump is waiting for the right time here. And at the same time, the conditions that led to these protests, the economic immiseration and the fact that the Iranian currency is not worth the paper that it's printed on are not changing. The regime has real problems. And I do think the president is going to pick his moment, and I hope he does.
I think he's going to, but we have two different kinds of strikes. Punitive, meaning there's a guardrail here, you don't machine gun your own people. And then regime destabilization, perhaps change, as with Serbia, as with Libya. That would be a sustained air campaign. Do you think he's got the will to do that? I mean, he's got an iron will, but I don't think he's in the bombing campaign business. Do you?
I'm not sure. Predicting the actions of this president is tough. The latter, the regime destabilization, regime decapitation, is obviously more difficult than the former. But I wouldn't put it past this president. And Hugh, I would note the Wall Street Journal report last night that this regime is looking, that this president, Trump, is looking at regime change in Cuba. So I think we can
I
totally
saw that. Love that.
And I think the two are connected because what underlies both of these things, as well as the Maduro raid in Venezuela, is the we can totally discard the notion that this president is not concerned with matters beyond our shores. I think he's looking at legacy building, and I think he knows that the way he acts on Iran is intimately connected with his legacy. And when he went out and did that press conference on Maduro, announcing that they had captured him, he cited it in a line of foreign policy actions, including the killing of Qasem Soleimani and Operation Midnight Hammer. So I would say now those three things are the things he's proudest of, and he may be looking to add a fourth and a fifth with another strike on Iran and in Cuba. It's clear this is where his mind is, though. And you could add Greenland to that, too. His mind
I
is
am
abroad,
going to.
better
I think
or for
Greenland's a
worse.
big deal, Eliana, and I want your quick take on it because Noah Rothman doesn't think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal.
Oh, I don't know if we know yet, Hugh. On the one hand, the president may have seen the Dow and the markets and climbed down with some kind of phony deal. I think that's a point Noah and some of his colleagues at National Review were making. On the other hand, it may be that Rubio and the vice president and others negotiate American sovereignty over bases in Greenland, and we really do get a deal for rare earth minerals. I myself, I don't have a real knowledge of where this is going to end up. But I'm for it. I'm for the sovereignty over the bases.
Yeah, I'm for the Golden Dome, and I'm for protecting the 230-mile exclusive economic zone, which U.S. sovereignty over some of the bases would give us the right to patrol and protect. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people know about the law of the sea. Hey, Eliana Y. Johnson, follow her on X at Eliana Y. Johnson. Go see Bob Spongepants again and again and again until you can repeat every line in the movie, because that's what I did when I was your age. Eliana, good to see you. Thank you. The story that Eliana mentioned is called "The U.S. is Actively Seeking Regime Change in Cuba by the End of the Year." Just so happens I had a dinner with a daughter of Cuban exiles last night who she's a Cuban exile. She sat on on Fidel Castro's lap, and her father knew Che, and they got out of Cuba because they knew they were going to become murderous communists, and Che already was a sadistic monster. So yes, I hope we have regime change in Cuba. Now, what's the use of having a nationally syndicated radio and television show unless you shamelessly ask for advice? This is my iPhone. I also have another phone, a consumer cellular phone, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. That's for family only. This is my work phone. It's an iPhone 11. All right, iPhone 11. Now, that came out in 2019, so it's 7 years old. And I have been told by people who actually know what they're talking about that I've been hacked by foreign governments and that I am a target for foreign government listening. And that's not because I'm a spy, but because I hang out with people who might know things. They don't ever say anything to me. I always put the phone when people who might know things are around me, but I've been told you're being listened to. I already know I'm being listened to, and I've been phished and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to buy a new iPhone. And so my question to you folks is, and it's a technical question, can the guy at the iPhone bar give me an iPhone where I keep my number and my contacts and not have malware and cut out all the bad stuff? Or do I have to start over with a new phone number? 1-800-520-1234. I know to keep all of the apps off. I learned the hard way. You sign the consent thing to an app and they can turn on and listen to you, and that's why you get ads pushed out to you. I'm not worried about capitalists trying to sell me stuff. I really don't want bad guys listening to my conversations because I talk to people. I'm a journalist. So I would like to get an unhacked iPhone. Plus this one, I've got the port problem. I'm sure many of you know. The old iPhones had the little ports, and it's impossible to charge anymore. After 7 years, something should weigh out. I'm not mad at Apple. I think iPhones are still magic. But I'm careful with it. But nevertheless, I want to know if I go to the iPhone bar and say, I want a new iPhone. I'd like to keep the number in the contacts. I don't want anything else transferred over. Can they do that? And does it make my phone clean? 1-800-520-1234. I want techies. I want people who do this for a living. 1-800-520-1234. I got a 5-page printout from Grok on how to assure it happening. I don't want to read that. I don't want to know that. I can't possibly execute on that. I want to be able to say to the techie at the iPhone bar, I want to buy the new one, and I want it to be clean. I want my old number and my old contact. I just want to know if that's possible. It's a very simple question, because they'll tell me it's possible because they want to sell me an iPhone. I know them. But I want you to tell me, is that possible? 1-800-520-1234 connects you to me, Hugh Hewitt. I have a simple question for my audience for this segment. I have to buy a new iPhone. This one is broken, 7 years old. I know for a fact that this one has been hacked. I know there's malware on it. I know there are bad apps on it. I know that hostile foreign entities have access to it. I know that for a fact. All I want to know is if I go to the iPhone and I go to the iBar and I say, I want to keep my number, I want to keep my contacts, I don't want you to transfer over anything else, will I be free of the hacking and the malware? Let's start with Denise in Chicago, because Denise has been avoiding the law in Chicago for a long time, because everybody does. What do you say, Denise?
Oh, yes, and now we're going to get bitter cold, so
yeah,
it's fun. Okay, so I didn't hear the first part when you had said about being hacked. I had told your screener that I was just talking to my IT guy about this. As far as if I go and only want certain things transferred over to the new phone, and he said yes, that you actually can do that. Now I don't know about the hacking.
Oh, I know they can transfer everything. I just want to transfer it free of the spies. That's what I really want to transfer it free of.
I don't know, but I will say this, Hugh. You need to get yourself a Faraday case.
I know. But,
okay.
I don't know anything. All I give them is...
if you really want to be safe, then you get the Faraday case, and, everybody puts their phone in there. Whoever you're talking to, they put their phone in.
I know, and that's what happens whenever people come over, they bring one, and whenever I go anywhere, they put it in the box, and I know that. But I want to start from ground zero. Thank you, Denise. Let me ask Alan in Arizona. Alan, can they do it at the iPhone store?
Well, I'm going to tell you this story. I just talked to some friends of mine that have business in and out of China, and they knew they were being listened to by the Chinese. So they got a new iPhone. They had connections with the military. So a friend of theirs downloaded encrypted software from the military to protect their phone. Within 3 days, the Chinese were back.
Well, I'm not going to China ever again. That's one of the reasons.
But they're listening. That's the point.
Well, I know, but I'm never going again. But I assume they have an NSA and they'll try and crack everything. So I'm not going to go super stealth on this because I don't have any classified material. I don't know anything, and the people that know things who talk to me don't tell me things. So I just don't want to bring the bad stuff with me. All right, Alan. Thank you, Ray, San Jose. You're in San Jose. You should know, Ray.
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Good. What do you say?
Long-time listener. Oh, yeah, you can do that. My girlfriend/fiance just did that. She had a iPhone 12, I think, and it still had the SIM card. And so when she got her new phone, there's no longer a SIM card. There's a digital. Basically, it's integrated into the computer. So now what she did is she transferred her phone number and her contacts. But as far as the apps, you have to physically elect to put those in each one.
And so you're pretty confident that if there was any malware on the old phone on the SIM card, it wouldn't go with it?
No, because the SIM card you no longer use. On the new phones, there's no SIM card. It's a digital. It's actually built into the phone itself.
Oh, that's good news.
Software.
That's why I ask people stuff. Okay, Ray, thank you. Roland, you've got advice for me. Roland is calling from Philly. Of course he has advice for me. He's from Philly. I didn't ask for advice. I asked a question, Roland.
I'm not from Philly originally. I'm from Miami. But anyway, here's the thing. The operating system in the iPhone is where the weakness is. No matter what you do, the operating system can be hacked. And something as simple as receiving a text you don't open can install malware on an iPhone. That being said, the only way you can truly be safe is to get a phone that has open source operating system. It's called a Brax phone, BRAX. You can go online. There's a multitude of YouTube videos done by the owner, and they can walk you through setting everything up. And don't worry about, NSA kind of stuff. The real worry is if you have any banking apps on there.
I don't.
Impacts your banking apps.
Yeah,
okay?
I don't.
Very good.
Yeah, no
Very good.
one in their right mind should have a banking app on their phone.
Well, on a Brax phone, you're safe.
Well, I'm going to be completely honest with you, Roland. I'm not going to do that because I'm lazy. I'm going to go to the iPhone store and say, give me a new iPhone that isn't hackable. And I assume that, this is my assumption. Apple knows we don't want to be hacked, right? They might want to sell us stuff, but they're going to try and upgrade the phone. I just don't want to screw it up by transferring over malware, right?
Well, then you need to have somebody scan all the stuff that's on your iPhone and just start fresh.
Well, but I don't need a new number to start fresh, do I?
No, you can port the number. Okay, you can switch carriers. You can port your number. The number itself is not going to carry any kind of malware.
Okay, that's good. That's the most important thing. In fact, I can do that, keep the old phone. What about the contacts list?
The contacts list, I would suggest download that into your computer and use a virus scanner to make sure that there's nothing in there, and then transfer it to the new phone.
Can they do that for me?
It depends on where you go, because most of those people at the iPhone place, they can tell you how to install all the new apps. But as far as doing any kind of security stuff, I would suggest you check online and maybe find somebody that's an expert at it, or find an app that can scan all of your apps.
All right, will do. Hey, Roland, thank you. That's why I have an audience, because they can give me that. That gave me a great deal. Port the number doesn't do anything. I'll worry about the contacts later. Now, let me go to J.D. Vance in Minneapolis at a press conference, because he went up to Minneapolis today, cut number 15.
I wanted to meet with business leaders, with ICE officers, with local law enforcement to try to understand a little bit better what's going on so that we can tone down the temperature a little bit, reduce the chaos, but still allow us as a federal government to enforce the American people's immigration laws. That is the purpose of my visit. Now, this is step one or step two of that process. There's going to be a lot of work that follows through from here. I'm happy to talk about that. But I think I learned a few things that were very important. So number one of the things I learned is that the guys behind me are doing an incredible job. And frankly, a lot of the media is lying about the job that they do every single day. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't occasionally stories out there, there aren't occasionally videos out there that suggest that these guys, or at least some of the people who work for them, are not doing everything right. But very often, if you look at the context of what's going on, you understand that these people are under an incredible amount of duress, an incredible amount of chaos, and because of a few very far left agitators, a lot of these guys are unable to do their jobs without being harassed, without being doxxed, and sometimes without being assaulted. That's totally unacceptable. And that's one of the things that I want to send a message to is, yes, come out and protest me, protest our immigration policy, but do it peacefully. If you assault a law enforcement officer, the Trump administration and the Department of Justice is going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law.
Cut number 16.
I wanted to show some support for these guys who, frankly, are operating in a very, very tough environment. I heard a lot of stories today about that I think drives home just how chaotic the environment on the ground here has already gotten. For example, did you know that within the last, week or so, maybe even more recently than that, you had a couple of ICE officers who were off duty, who had been doxxed online, who were sitting and having a meal at a restaurant in Minneapolis when a bunch of agitators showed up, locked the door, made them feel like they were in danger for their lives. And then, of course, it was federal law enforcement officers who had to come up, lower the temperature on the situation, and actually get those two off-duty officers to a point of safety. Now, imagine, if you would, your life and your perspective on law enforcement if you can't even go to a restaurant without some agitators locking the door and making you feel like your life is in danger. That is the environment that has been created, I think, by a lot of very frankly, far left people, but also by some of the state and local law enforcement officials who could do a much better job in cooperating and working.
Amen, Vice President Vance. Here's the one we don't have. I'm going to have to read it to you. From a reporter, a local school district here is alleging ICE agents detained a 5-year-old after preschool on Tuesday. Are you proud of how your administration is conducting this immigration crackdown? Vice President Vance. I actually saw this terrible story while I was coming to Minneapolis. I see this story, and I'm the father of a 5-year-old, actually a 5-year-old little boy. I think to myself, my God, this is terrible. How do we arrest a 5-year-old? Well, I do a little bit more research, and what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested. His dad was an illegal alien, and when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old freeze to death? I wish we had that one. Well, I'll try and get you cut 19 by the next segment. Former United States Senator Jim Talent is the senior fellow at the Reagan Institute for Peace Through Strength. Hello, Jim. How are you?
I am doing well, Mr. Hewitt. How are you?
Good. We're going to play 20 questions. The 20 questions have to do with the 10 movies nominated for Best Movie of the Year by the Academy today. And the questions are, have you heard of it and have you seen it for each movie? Movie number 1, Frankenstein. Have you heard of it? Have you seen it?
No and no. And I'm afraid a lot of my answers are going to be along those lines.
All right. Number 2, Hamnet.
Hamnet?
Hamnet.
Is that Hamlet misspelled?
No, that's Hamlet with an N in
Hamlet.
it. That's Hamlet with an N in it.
No.
Hamnet.
Definitely no and no.
All right. The Secret Agent.
No. I like the song from the 60s, Secret Agent.
That doesn't count for hearing about it, so that's a no on the movie.
I used to jog to that song.
How about Sentimental Value?
No, I haven't seen it. No idea what it is. No.
Sinners.
Sinners. No. Sounds intriguing. Might catch it on streaming in a couple years if I'm desperate.
Okay. Here's the best
if
opportunity
there's no Browns
for Jim
game
Talent.
on.
F1.
Now, I didn't see it, but I recognized that my wife wanted to see it. Isn't that the one with Brad Pitt?
Yes, there you go. You got one out of, we got one thus far. Train Dreams.
Train Dreams. No.
No and no. Marty Supreme.
Marty Supreme. That's draws another blank, you.
No and no. One battle after another, and they're not talking about reconciliation.
I've heard of that one because I saw a couple articles. And I actually watched part of a video saying how terrible the movie was.
All right, that's 2 out of 20, 2 out of 18, and finally, Begonia.
Begonia.
Yep.
Wait a minute,
wasn't
that a country in an old Marx Brothers movie?
No,
I mean,
I don't know, but Begonia. You're 2 for 20. You're better, by the way.
Fredonia.
You're better than Eliana Johnson and Noah Rothman. So at least you've heard of 2 of these movies. Jim, what's wrong with Hollywood? I used to go to 2 movies a week until like 5 years ago, before COVID.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of economics, control by people who don't care about the quality of the movies. Whatever you think about the old Hollywood system, I mean, the men who ran it were ruthless, but they really did care about producing good movies. And then, of course, their obsession with woke topics and messaging and the rest of it has really interfered with the creative instincts that they used to have. So no, it's
let me get to the biggest.
The last movie I saw was Godzilla -1, which was very good, and it was Japanese.
You go. I missed that too. All right, from very silly Hollywood to very serious. Should President Iran strike Iran, and will he? President Trump.
Okay, I think he should, and I think he will. But let me go into the background or the reasoning for that. I mean, the reason to do it, there are two reasons to do it. One is because we said we would, and I think it's important to sustain our credibility. And the second is, if it's done properly, it could further weaken the regime. The reason not to do it, is that the rest of the Middle East is really going well now. I mean, we're in phase 2, which I think we really have Hamas behind the 8 ball. I mean, the Lebanese president just said, Hezbollah's got to disarm, got to leave. Syria and Israel are negotiating closer terms. And so, the old legal saying, when the judge is going your way, just be quiet. And so there's a danger that if we hit Iran, it could disrupt some of those activities, which is one of the reasons, evidently, our allies and partners have urged us not to do it. Now, I think what the president's eventually going to do is hit them in some very targeted way, but something that will hurt them uniquely without disrupting the region. Kind of when he took out Qasem Soleimani. When was that? 2018?
2020. 19? Yeah, early 2020. All right, now Jim Talent. Amit Segal is a very. I hope he hits Karg Island, but people tell me there are reasons not to. The Amit Segal, very, very serious Israeli analyst, said one of the second-order consequences of President Trump obliterating the Iranian nuclear program was to drive Saudi Arabia further away from the Abraham Accords because they no longer need them. I had not considered that before, but Amit's a very good reporter. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I believe Dwayne and I have discussed that on the pod, that one of the ironic outcomes of the real successes over the last year is that the Gulf states have less of a reason. I mean, they're less afraid of Iran now. But personally, and you might want to ask Amit this, is, the Saudis are not stupid. And they know what President Trump wants. He wants the Abraham Accords to be expanded. And there are things they want. And so by engaging in this kind of a tactic, being a very reluctant partner in that respect, they're probably hoping to get more. There are other countries besides the United States that are good at pursuing their own interests. We don't see that very much in Europe, but we do see it in the Middle East. So that's what I suspect, because I think MBS wants economic development for the country. He wants stability in the region. He wants to modernize Saudi Arabia, and all of that is advanced by the right kind of agreements with Israel, which may or may not be a formal recognition. That doesn't matter that much. So I think if we continue.
So my last question is, what do you make of the Greenland outline as the president described it, provided it's accurate?
I like it. And your producer wrote a great column about it, and because he actually read the national security strategy, which in discussing Western Hemisphere, I think mentions 5 times critical supply chains, the importance of military readiness. This whole episode, this whole exercise for the last year has been about sending a signal that we're very interested in the Arctic, and we're going to pursue our claims there, that we're very interested in shoring up our supply chains, and Greenland is an important part of that, and that we're going to protect our hemisphere and pursue our own interests. And we got an agreement. I don't know exactly what's in it, but we'll have more freedom to operate militarily. We'll have better access to the rare earths in Greenland, and that's more than we had. So, I don't think President Trump ever really cared about getting sovereignty over Greenland. He wants to integrate Greenland into America's national security strategy for the Western Hemisphere. So I'll wait to see exactly what's in it, but it's got to be better than what we had before. And I don't think we would have gotten it if we hadn't combined this pressure tactics with the negotiations.
Jim Talent, always good to talk with someone who actually thinks about national security on a daily basis. Jim Talent can be followed on X at Jim Talent. I have tracked down the J.D. Vance question and answer with the reporter that I read to you in 2 segments ago. I want to play it for you now. Cut 19.
A local school district here is alleging ICE agents detaining a 5-year-old after preschool on Tuesday. We've also seen multiple American citizens detained by ICE on harassed by 6 weeks. Are you proud of how your administration is conducting this immigration crackdown here in Minnesota?
Well, I'm proud of the fact that we're standing behind law enforcement, and I'm proud of the fact that we're enforcing the country's laws. But, you asked a question about this 5-year-old kid. I actually saw this terrible story while I was coming to Minneapolis. We just left Toledo, Ohio this morning for an economic messaging event. And I see this story, and I'm a father of a 5-year-old, actually, a 5-year-old little boy. And I think to myself, oh, my God, this is terrible. How did we arrest a 5-year-old? Well, I do a little bit more follow-up research. And what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien. And then when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? Are they not supposed to arrest an illegal alien in the United States of America? If the argument is that you can't arrest people who have violated our laws because they have children, then every single parent is going to be completely given immunity from ever being the subject of law enforcement. That doesn't make any sense. No one thinks that makes any sense. Now, there are so many of these cases like that where if you just understand the context, there have been a number of situations that I've looked into personally where I say, wait a second. We don't want ICE arresting American citizens. They're supposed to be enforcing the immigration laws against illegal aliens. So then I look into it and I find out that the American citizen who was arrested took a swing at an ICE officer. You can't have that happen. And of course they have to defend themselves. And of course they have the right to detain somebody who assaults a law enforcement officer. Now, this is my point.
This point, he makes it again and again. Cut number 20. And by the way, this is from a satellite feed that is made a little bit glitchy because of the snowstorm. So forgive the pauses in it. Cut number 20.
After the Renee Good shooting, the administration seemed to suggest that ICE officers enjoyed near complete immunity. But today you told the Washington Examiner that when appropriate, the administration might take disciplinary actions against ICE agents. So is that a change of opinion? And if so, why the change in tone?
No, I didn't say, and I don't think any other official within the Trump administration said that officers who engaged in wrongdoing would enjoy immunity. That's absurd. What I did say is that when federal law enforcement officers violate the law, that is typically something that federal officials would look into. We don't want these guys to have kangaroo courts. We want them to actually have real due process, real investigation, because again, sometimes they're accused of wrongdoing, and it turns out when you learn the context, they didn't actually do anything wrong. But of course, we're going to investigate these things. Of course, we're investigating the Renee Good shooting, but we're investigating them in a way that respects people's rights and that ensures that if somebody did something wrong, yes, they're going to face disciplinary action, but we're not going to judge them in the court of public opinion. I've spoken at length on this particular case. I think that Renee Good's death is a tragedy. I also think that she rammed an ICE officer with her car. So the tragedy here is multi-layered. The tragedy is there was a misunderstanding. The tragedy is that Renee Good lost her life. The tragedy is that you have ICE officers who are going into communities where they're worried that if they call 911, no one's going to come to help them. That is what produces this terrible situation, and it's something state and local officials here in Minnesota could solve.
One more cut 21.
Earlier this week,
a colleague at the Washington Post reported today that an ICE memo allows agents to enter people's houses without a judge's warrant. What do you say to people who are concerned about this violating the Constitution, and how much is this tactic being used?
Yeah, so I saw that story, and the story is like so much that I read in the mainstream media. It's missing a whole lot of context, and when you appreciate the context, it makes sense. No one is saying, look, there are exceptions. For example, a crazy exception, if somebody is fired at from inside a house, they don't need a warrant to go inside that person's house. There are very narrow exceptions to the warrant requirement where law enforcement officers don't need a warrant if, for example, they're an imminent threat of their lives. But what we've said and what ICE has proposed, what the Department of Homeland Security really has proposed in the Department of Justice, is that we can get administrative warrants to enforce administrative immigration law. Now, it's possible, I guess, that the courts will say no, and of course, if the courts say no, we would follow that law, but nobody is talking about doing immigration enforcement without a warrant. We're talking about different types of warrants that exist in our system. Typically, what happens, not always, but typically in the immigration system, those are handled by administrative law judges. So we're talking about getting warrants from those administrative law judges, and then, of course, with other cases, you get judges, or you get warrants from a judge. That's very consistent with the practice of American law. I'm sure the courts will weigh in on that.
And an ALJ, by the way, is called an Article 1 judge because they're established by statute by Congress, ALJs in the immigration system. An Article 3 judge is also established by Congress, but pursuant to the federal judiciary power of Article 3, those warrants are different. I'm not going to say one is harder or easier to get, but they're different. I don't have to deal with what's coming at Josh Kraushaar. Going to be a bad weekend in the Beltway, Josh. You ready for it?
You know, we haven't had Snowmageddon, as they call it here, in about a decade. So the way the forecasters are, you guys in Ohio, in Ohio, that you're used to that kind of snow, but we haven't had more than a foot of snow in a long time. So we're,
I think the snow is better than icy rain. So take the snow. I have a drill, Josh, before we get to the real story. I want to know if you have heard and then seen the 10 movies nominated for Best Picture. So heard of and seen. Frankenstein.
Yep. No.
No and no?
No and no, yeah.
All right. Hamnet.
Hamnet, never even heard of it. No and no.
The Secret Agent.
No and no.
Sentimental Value.
No and no.
Sinners.
No and no.
F1.
No and no.
Train Dreams.
No, I also haven't heard of that one either.
Marty Supreme.
Yes, and yes.
Oh, you've seen it?
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, I've seen it too. Okay, so that's a hit though. One Battle After Another.
No, but that's on my weekend snow watch list. So
that's a yes. A no and a yes. And Begonia.
Yes. No and no.
So you're 3 out of 20. And that's better than Noah Rothman, Eliana Johnson, and Jim Talent. So what's that tell you about Hollywood and movies?
Well, the disconnect between what's nominated for the Oscars and Hugh, I actually try to see some of the artsier, critically acclaimed movies.
You and me both.
But some of the ones I had not even heard of at least half of I think 3 or 4 of the ones you mentioned. I would want to make a shout out for Song. I'm surprised Song Blue was not nominated because I thought that was one of the better movies.
I know, I liked it, but they're not going to nominate things that people like, and therefore they're not going to get Oscars, and no one's ever going to hear of them. All right, let me move on, if I can, Josh, to the big story. Do you think President Trump is going to strike Iran, and should he?
If you asked me that a couple days ago, I would have been more bullish, given the comments made by the president and a lot of his inner circle. But at Davos, Steve Witkoff seemed to suggest that they were going to be looking at a diplomatic option, and that rhetoric was echoed by the president this morning in announcing the Board of Peace. And it just feels like Trump is very responsive to the headlines in the news, to the visuals coming out of social media, and it does feel like that. Even though we have moved military assets into the Middle East and we're prepared more so than we may have been a week ago, it doesn't seem like right now the administration is ready to strike. I admit I could be surprised. The president has surprised me before, but it just doesn't seem, based on public comments from both the president and Steve Witkoff.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you do not remember, because I also fell for the head fake last June when Midnight Hammer dropped, and I completely fell for the head fake on Operation Absolute Resolve with Maduro. I mean, I just did.
Yeah. I mean, look, I hesitate to make predictions for that very reason. And Trump has sort of gone back and forth in terms of his rhetoric in the last week on Iran. But look, there's every bit of evidence that protesters continue to be killed, the human rights disaster, that the horrible atrocities that took place, that they're fresh in my mind, but I wonder, given all the news of the last week, with whether it was Greenland, whether it was all the Davos back and forth, whether that's not quite as front and center in the White House's mind.
Now, let me ask you about Greenland, Josh. There are lots of reactions. I thought Trump made Davos great again because it became kind of a joke, and he actually made news there and made it relevant. What did you think about the Greenland deal and the Davos trip?
Look, this seems to be a pattern with Trump, and not always in the best of ways, foreign policy wise, where we kind of create a chaotic situation, end up backing down, coming up to some compromise, and kind of getting back to where we were in square one. We're still kind of learning about the negotiations and the contours of a deal that the U.S. had been, or that Trump had been talking to Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, about. Maybe we have more autonomy over military bases in parts of Greenland. But we are, this is something that could have been handled diplomatically. There didn't need to be a rupture in the U.S.-European relationship to get to the point where we are today.
But I don't think. Okay, let me argue my case. There wasn't a rupture. There was an upset Francois Macron, who nobody cares about. There's an upset EU that has nothing to say about a NATO issue, and the 8 members of NATO did not rupture. So I think there's a lot of TDS on display here.
Perhaps, and I think it was unfortunate. I mean, a lot of people are talking about the Canadian Prime Minister's Mark Carney's speech, talking about this rupture, and I can't help but think that he's already been trying to improve or build business ties and economic ties to China, which is hard to square his comments. The more idealistic and strategic comments that Carney made with the Chinese relationship and the inattention to anti-Semitism that Canada has been playing in recent years. So I do think there's a little bit of posturing and a little bit of kind of chest thumping from some of the Europeans, but I also think this is a totally needless provocation, and I think. On national security, Denmark and NATO and the EU we're all on pretty much the same page, and I think we still are on the same page. Aside from all the threats that Trump made that freaked the heck out of the Scandinavians and the EU, and I don't think that was necessary.
Well said, Josh Kraushaar. As always, follow him on X at Josh Kraushaar. Don't forget, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I took it in hour number 1. I remind you in hour number 2. Do not leave home without it. Put it in your car, especially if you're going to be shoveling snow this weekend. You want to be a Relief Factor user. There are going to be so many people with bad backs this weekend because they're going to do stuff they haven't done in 10 years inside the Beltway. They're going to have a snowstorm, and they're going to get their shovel out, and they're going to go out, and they're going to hurt themselves because they're not Buckeyes. Here's the deal. When you do that, when you throw your back out, you get a heating pad, alternate ice cold, and then you call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Don't take the over-the-counter. Don't take Aleve. Don't take Tylenol. Sometimes you can't take. Some people can't take NSAIDs. Get yourself Relief Factor. Call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. The starter pack is $19.95. That's a week's worth of Relief Factor. Or you can find the starter pack at their website at relieffactor.com. relieffactor.com. That's been nominated for one of the best original songs in the Oscar nominations today. Okay, by that. Oh, my gosh. I'm one of the few people in America that have 2 phones, 2 numbers, because I think journalists do this more than anyone else. I got a phone number that the world has, and I turn it off. And then I have a wonderful wife and 3 kids and their spouses and 7 grandkids. And so I have a phone I leave on at night, a different number and a different phone. That's my consumer cellular phone. And the reason I have that is because it's so affordable. If you're over 50, you can have a phone with unlimited data for $60 a month. In fact, you can have 2 lines at $60 a month because you're not paying for data you don't use. That's why you ought to get your phone bill out and call Consumer Cellular. Same great sound as the other phone. Same great service as the other phone. Consumer Cellular uses the same towers as Big Cell. That's the big secret as to why there are a lot of cell phone companies out there that will offer you deals. But they're also trying to sell you phones, and Consumer Cellular is not doing that. Consumer Cellular just wants you to buy your cell service. No frills, but a lot of thrills because of great service. You can have service without sacrificing your savings. You can save money. So get your phone bill out. By the way, it's for everyone. You can be under 52. You're probably using too much data. Get your phone bill out and call 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. And my name is the code for your second month free. Hugh, H-U-G-H. If you say, Hugh is my offer, I'm looking for the special offer for Hugh, you get your second month free. Whether you call or go online, you can also go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Give it a try. At least try and see whether or not you can save money. It takes about 20 minutes to switch. You call 1-800-411-4454, and they will see, they'll walk with you what you are paying and what they can offer you and the gigs that you need and how much gigs you are using in terms of data. Do yourself a favor. Save money. Don't throw money out the car window. $5, $10, $20, sometimes $100 a month you're throwing out the window that you don't have to do if you have consumercellular.com. Come right back. I'm going to play more of Vice President Vance. He had a speech in Toledo today, and then he had a press conference in Minnesota. He went up to be on scene with his ICE officers in Minnesota, and he did a fabulous job. He's a great communicator. I wrote that yesterday in my Washington Examiner, actually 2 days ago in my Fox News column. His first year was super. He's done 100 appearances. He's done 50 sit-down interviews. He's a fabulous communicator, and he did it again today. And we'll play some of that for you when we come back. So much going on today. I want to make sure that you do not miss the most important thing that President Trump said at Davos. This is the most important thing he said. Cut number 5.
And many have said that if Hamas doesn't do what they promised they would do, and I think they probably will, but they were born with rifles in their hands. Literally born. The first day they had a rifle put into their hands, but they have to give up their weapons, and if they don't do that, it's going to be the end of them. But many countries have told me we want to go in and do it, and they really aren't countries that you traditionally think of as being involved in that. But that's a fire. Hezbollah in Lebanon, we have to do something about that. But these are, I call them remnants, small remnants compared to what it was before. It was massive, large, powerful countries fighting each other.
And now Hamas has to give up their weapons, or Israel will make them disarm. The border peace is a good idea, but you can't rebuild Gaza. You can't get it into a rebuilt situation that's actually beautiful. It's great real estate. It's got to be planned, got to be done the right way. Can't do that with a bunch of terrorists running around with AK-47s they have to disarm. Now, J.D. Vance in Minneapolis. I played some of it. I want to make sure you hear all of it. This is cut number 17. He's giving a press conference to the assorted local and national and international media assembled there. Cut number 17.
I heard from a business leader today who told me a very tough story. And I think so much of what's gone wrong in Minneapolis is people not trying to understand the perspective of somebody else. Try to understand what somebody else is experiencing, whether they're a law enforcement officer or anybody in the community here in Minneapolis. So they told me a story about this manufacturing facility where an illegal immigrant was being arrested. And as these employees are going into the manufacturing facility, all of a sudden, an illegal immigrant shows up. They don't know it's an illegal immigrant. And then a bunch of ICE officers descend. Now, these people just want to go to work. They want to go to work safely. And now, all of a sudden, there's a major law enforcement operation happening right outside their place of business. Now, from one perspective, I certainly understand why a business leader or why an employee would say, whoa, what's going on? It's a little scary, no matter your position in life, if a bunch of cop cars show up and they're arresting somebody. Now, the additional context is that we know that people online have been encouraging illegal immigrants that one way they can evade arrest is by showing up at a legitimate place of business, making it impossible for these guys to actually enforce our immigration laws. So while I can understand the perspective of somebody who doesn't want to see an arrest happen at their place of work, I can also understand the perspective of our immigration enforcement officers who have to do their job and can't allow a heckler's veto over our immigration enforcement. And so much of what's gone wrong is the failure to do that. And here's the point. We can do a good job of enforcing our immigration laws without the chaos, but it actually requires the cooperation of state and local officials. If you look at blue cities and blue states, red cities and red states, you go to Austin, Texas, or Memphis, Tennessee, you go to the state of Texas, obviously a very red state, or the state of Tennessee, a very red state, but you've got blue cities within those states, you do not have this level of chaos. The reason why things have gotten so out of hand is because of failure of cooperation between the state and local authorities and what these guys are trying to do. We have a ton of resources, a ton of ICE agents in this city right now that I would rather us not have. I'd love to send those guys home. They're not even doing targeted immigration enforcement. They are trying to protect ICE officers who are doing immigration enforcement, because when a crowd surrounds them and these guys call 911, the local officials, the local cops have been told to stand down. So we have people here who aren't even doing immigration enforcement, they're doing force protection, so that if a rioter tries to ruin the life or assault an ICE officer, they're actually protected. Now, why doesn't it make more sense for the local cops to get involved in that situation? Why not just have the mayor or the local officials tell the police officers, you know what, if an ICE officer is being assaulted by a far-left agitator, you are invited, you should actually help them. That's what would work out in any normal situation, and that's what happens in nearly every jurisdiction, red or blue, in the United States of America. The reason it hasn't happened here is because the local authorities have been told, stand down, do not help ICE, promote the violence, promote the agitation, but don't do anything to lower the temperature and lower the chaos. That's a...
Now, I'm going to play you one more cut from the Minneapolis presser I did, most of them an hour or two, but then I'll go to the Toledo speech, so I'm doing them in reverse order, but the press conference is in Minneapolis. If you're listening on AM 1280, The Answer, he's talking about your city, your wacky mayor, your buffoon governor. They need to get with the program, and the chaos will go away. Remember, chaos brought ICE to your city. ICE didn't bring chaos to your city. Cut number 18, Vice President Vance in Minneapolis.
Here's another example of how the lack of cooperation between state and local officials makes it harder for us to do our job and turns up the temperature. Let's say, for example, we have a criminal migrant who is a sex offender. And let's say that we've got to go and arrest that person who, Democrat or Republican, wants a sex offender living in their community. I would assume, I would hope that most people don't. But because they're an illegal alien, we don't know their last address. We may have known their address 3 years ago, but we don't know their address now. What we'd like to do is talk to local officials and say, you know what, according to the Medicaid rolls, where was the last address this person was domiciled? Or according to a SNAP application, a food stamps application, maybe that could give us insight to where this person is today. Or maybe they had some local court trouble. We could go to the local courthouse or even the local jail and try to find where this criminal sex offender is today. The local authorities have been told, do not cooperate. So these guys are trying to go out and enforce the law. They're trying to arrest sex offenders, but they're trying to do it in an environment where local officials have been told, do not help them, do not provide intelligence about where these sex offenders might be. This is disgraceful. And there are a lot of things that all of us could do better to lower the temperature, but the number one thing that I learned today is that the best way to facilitate reasonable enforcement of the law, but also to lower the chaos in Minneapolis, would be for state and local officials to cooperate. Now, I will say, on one final positive note, I actually think that there's some hope, some reason to think that there's going to be better cooperation in the weeks and months to come. I think that because I've talked to some of the local officials here. I think there are reasons to believe that these people are going to step up and actually ask the cops to protect our ICE officers when they're being assaulted, who are going to ask the local courts to cooperate with getting criminal sex offenders out of our community. That's a good thing. That's the good news, and that's something I'm going to work on when I get back to Washington. But please, if you're a local official, if you're the mayor of this town, if you have any influence over those people, just tell them to cooperate. Because we could have immigration enforcement operate as smoothly and without the chaos that we see in Austin, Texas, or Memphis, Tennessee, or even rural parts of the state of Minnesota. All we need is a little cooperation. I guarantee we're going to do the best to be professional, to respect people's rights, to not do anything that we don't have to do in order to enforce immigration laws, but it would make our lives a lot easier, it would make our officers a lot safer, and it would make Minneapolis much less chaotic if we had a little bit of cooperation from the state and local officials.
Now, his message was the same that he delivered in Toledo a little bit earlier in the day, so I want to grab a clip from that as well. Cut number 14, this is the Vice President in Toledo.
Now, I'm headed from here to Minneapolis, where we're going to talk with some of our ICE agents, talk with local officials about how we can turn down the chaos. And my simple piece of advice to them is going to be, look, if you want to turn down the chaos in Minneapolis, stop fighting immigration enforcement and accept that we have to have a border in this country. It's not that hard. If you look all across our country, what's happened in Minneapolis is happening almost nowhere else in the United States of America. And that's because whether it's in Texas or Tennessee, it's in red states, it's in blue cities, even within our country, most people are cooperating with the simple principle that we ought to be able to enforce our immigration laws and get illegal criminals the hell out of the United States of America. It's really not that complicated. But in a few distinct cities, you see this craziness because the far left has decided that the United States of America shouldn't have a border anymore, and they are willing to fight and penalize and dox and even assault our law enforcement officers in order to fight for the basic principle that anybody ought to be able to come into the United States of America. Well, I'll tell you right now, the Trump administration, we reject that. We are going to get illegal criminals out of our country, and we're not going to let a few left-wing radicals stop us.
Let me sneak in one more. Cut number 9, J.D. Vance in Toledo.
So when I talk about lowering the temperature, those are the two things that we want those local authorities to do. Help us find sex offenders and get them out of their community. And again, this is bonkers. Think about this. If you've got a neighbor who's a sex offender and somebody wants to go and take that person away, I'm going to raise my hand and say, yes, please, get that person away from my children. What is wrong with Minneapolis authorities? They so hate the idea of enforcing immigration laws that they're telling their people not to get sex offenders out of their community. It's crazy, and it's why we see so much chaos in Minneapolis, but not elsewhere.
He's right, and there's more of what he had to say on the economy coming up. I want to remind everyone, now I've got a great audience all across the United States, but it's no surprise I've got a huge audience inside the Beltway, AM 570 The Answer, and on the Salem News Channel. And my Beltway audience is worried because they're not a snowstorm-friendly place. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Okay, and they're not friendly. They are allergic to snow, even the mention of snow. So they've gone out and they've loaded up, but the one thing they need to get is relief factor, because two things are going to happen by Sunday night. 10 to 20 inches of snow are supposed to drop on the Beltway between now and Sunday night. And people have to move that snow, and they're going to do it with a shovel. And when they do it with a shovel, they're going to use muscle sets that they haven't used since 10 years ago when they had a major snowstorm. Most of the time, people just let it melt. They push it around with a broom. There's not much snow in Virginia, certainly not in Maryland in the district. And they haven't got the equipment to get off the road, so if it gets really cold, as is expected, it's going to get slushy and then turn into ice, so nightmare driving. But mostly they're going to shovel it, and they're going to hurt their back. They're going to hurt their neck. Everything's going to hurt. They will wish they had been taking Relief Factor. Don't let it happen to you. Take it every day, like I do. Go to relieffactor.com, find the starter pack. It costs $19.95. Or you can call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Ask for the starter pack, $19.95. It's a 3-week supply. They'll rush it to you. And you'll be glad when you're shoveling the snow on Sunday that you ordered it on Thursday, because you're less likely to feel the after effects if you can get started right away. The first week, you take 3 packets a day. Second week, you take 2. Then you take 1. Relief Factor. Take it every day. It's a supplement I've only taken for 20 years. I got offered another supplement yesterday. And they don't compete against the brand of Relief Factor. They're not offering anti-inflammatory natural products. And I told the sales rep, sorry, I don't do supplements. I don't do them. I'm in great shape. I just got my blood panels back. I'm amazing. It's because I trundle and I get out there and get the exercise and I get my sleep and all that good stuff. But I also, because I take my Relief Factor, I'm able to do that. So I think you need one supplement. It's Relief Factor. Call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com, $19.95. 3 weeks, try it. You'll thank me. I want to go back to J.D. Vance. One more cut. He's in Toledo, about to go to Minnesota, talking about Minnesota. Cut number 8.
President Trump this week said that ICE has made some mistakes. I'm curious what steps the administration is taking to rectify those, and do you think your presence in Minneapolis today will calm the tensions there?
Well, certainly one of my goals is to calm the tensions, to talk to people, to try to understand what we can do better. You know, when the president says that that mistakes have been made, you know, my thought on that is that, well, of course there have been mistakes made, because you're always going to have mistakes made in law enforcement. I mean, we all know this. Probably every single person in this room knows a police officer. 99% of our police officers, probably more than that, are doing everything right. Some people are going to make mistakes. That's the nature of law enforcement. But the number one way where we could lower the mistakes that are happening, at least with our immigration enforcement, is to have local jurisdictions that are cooperating with us. There are some very basic things that would make Minneapolis look Memphis, Tennessee, a blue city where you do not have this chaos in immigration enforcement because the local police and the local authorities are cooperating with us. So when you look at Memphis, Tennessee, or Austin, Texas, or any other community virtually across the United States of America, and you don't see the same level of chaos in Minneapolis, the natural conclusion is that it's not what ICE is doing in Minneapolis, it's what Minneapolis authorities are doing to prevent ICE from doing their jobs. And that's exactly what's happening.
Well said. Now, his primary reason to go to Toledo was to give an economic address at Glass City, cut number 13.
We are 1 year in to raising wages for workers instead of declining wages for workers. We're 1 year in to $18 trillion of new investment for the United States of America instead of investment going to every other country but the United States of America. We're 1 year in to getting illegal aliens out of our country so that American homes can go to American citizens, which is exactly where they ought to go. And we are 1 year in to seeing lower inflation and bigger paychecks and more opportunity for the American worker. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that we are on the cusp of the greatest economic year in the history of the United States of America because we're doing something new for a change. We're investing in you. We're investing in American workers. We're investing in American businesses, and we're saying to everybody that the United States is open for business, but only if you invest in our great American people and our great American businesses. We are done with the old approach of shipping American jobs overseas and investing in everybody else. We're back to investing in the American worker, and we're not going to stop fighting for you until we return America to the true golden age of great American prosperity.
He was nailing it today. He hit another home run, cut number 10.
The Democrats talk a lot about the affordability crisis in the United States of America. And yes, there is an affordability crisis, one created by Joe Biden's policies. You don't turn the Titanic around overnight. It takes time to fix what was broken. I said earlier that the average American has seen $1,300 of real increase in their wages just in the past year. Well, Joe Biden, they saw a $3,000 decrease. Now, on the one hand, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that you're $1,300 richer than you were just a year ago. But you know what really pisses me off? That compared to when Donald Trump left office after his first term, you're still about $2,000 poorer. Because that's what happened under the Biden administration. They did so much damage that it's going to take us time to rebuild the great American prosperity that we had.
So talk about how they're going to do that. Cut number 12.
Why are we going to have the biggest tax year, the biggest refund year in the history of the United States of America? It's because the president, working with the Republican Congress, got no taxes on tips. It's because we got no taxes on overtime. It's because we got no taxes on Social Security. 3 promises that we ran on, 3 promises the President of the United States kept, and because of it, every single person in this room and every single person in the state of Ohio is going to benefit from it. That's what we said we were going to do. We were going to end the green energy scam and invest in American energy workers, and we did it. We're going to reward companies for investing in the United States of America and penalize companies for trying to invest in communist China and places all over the world. We said we were going to do it, and we did it. And because of it, we're starting to see the benefits for American workers every single day. We have the lowest inflation that we've had, well, since the last Trump administration. We have rising wages for American workers. You know that under the Biden administration, those terrible, terrible times, under the Biden administration, you lost an average of $3,000 over that 4 years because inflation was out of control and wages were stagnant for our country. You know, under the first year of the Trump administration, you've already gained over $1,300 in real wage gains. And my friends, we are just getting started. Because
just getting started, there's still a lot way to go, but I do believe he's right about the year ahead, provided that we do not have interference from market manipulation. Topic for another time, and we've got to get healthcare under control. Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs sponsor my program. One of our great sponsors, Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs.com. Their website is pharmawindfall.com. Has the best pollster in the business, or at least the equal of any pollster. John McLaughlin working with him. Hello, John. How are you?
I'm good. As long as, by the way, as long as President Trump's president, I get to say I'm a good pollster, so I'm happy about that.
Are you in the path of the snowstorm?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I hope you don't have anyone out making phone calls tonight. John, would you explain to us what you went out and asked people about with regards to lowering healthcare costs in America?
Well, by the way, you followed these polls. So we had polls in back in early November in 16 congressional districts that are battleground districts. And they were telling us that, cost for healthcare at 39% was their biggest cost of living concern. And food was right behind it at 38, but healthcare was ahead of it. And, 91-8, they want to keep healthcare affordable. They support certainly what President Trump has done to lower drug prices, where, they blame the pharmaceutical companies for the high prices, without a doubt, 73%. And at the same time, we've got, by the way, one of the things that's relevant, the president was talking about this today, is, he expects the Democrats to try to do a shutdown again because the economy grew at 5% in the last quarter, which is great. And it's out, it's growing faster than the rate of inflation right now. And back when we did our survey in October, it was October, people thought that 53-36, all voters across the country thought the Democrats should compromise and allow the government to open again. So, you got a situation which is going to come up, whether it's the healthcare tax credits or, Trump's trying to give consumers the money, et cetera, and trying to keep, drug prices down. You got a situation where the Democrats may again want to shut the, for the sake of power in the midterm elections, try to slow the economy down by putting some sand in the engine.
John, doesn't that kill them in the polls if they're going to shut the government again? I know that there's some radical left-wingers who want to defund ICE and they want to try and shut the government down. But isn't that electoral suicide for Democrats?
No, because what happens is the left of center media blames us. They don't blame. They make it about us. That it's that we're working for the big drug companies, or we're working for big insurance or whatever. They say we don't get a fair shot in the media, and this is what President Trump was talking about: the media misinformation. Because if you listen to Salem Radio, if you listen to your show, if you're following Fox or Newsmax, et cetera, those 4 out of 10 voters overwhelmingly support the president and vote for Republicans for Congress. And the other voters, there's another 4 out of 10 that are left of center media, and then there's another 3 in 10 that don't pay attention to either. They get information that they don't get information. For example, like in Minneapolis, when the ICE officer was getting beat up by 3 guys with a snow shovel and broomstick, that he had to shoot one of the guys. It was basically that, there was no reports of the attacks on him. It was
from Trende Diarwagwa. Yeah. But John, what do they think about when the one piece of information they can't avoid is when they go pick up their prescription, right?
Right.
Pharmawindfall.com, pharmawindfall.com.
Yep.
Who do they blame for that?
73-20, by the way. They approve what Trump is doing to keep the prices of drugs down. This is from a December national survey of 1,600 likely voters. And they blame the pharmaceutical companies, 73%, for the high prescription drug prices. And you really, nothing else comes close. And they say that prescription drugs are essential to healthcare affordability, 93 to 5. They favor employer choices over government outreach, 68 to 15. They don't want the federal government like restricting their choices where they could, like they say they'll support candidates for Congress that protect employer choices, 50 to 17. They want the ability to use the market to force the drug companies to lower their prices.
Do they think President Trump is doing that when you poll him?
Yes.
Do they give him credit?
Yes, they do, but he has to fight for that credit because unless we tell him about it, like you saw the president went out there before he went to Europe, was talking through his 1 year accomplishments. It's basically to get it out there because otherwise it's not reported. And, 3/4 of these voters, they're concerned about the government intervening in the marketplace. 85% are concerned.
Then head to pharmawindfall.com. Both John and I believe in conservatives for lower health care costs. They're a sponsor of this program. They send John into the field to get good information. It's all there at pharmawindfall.com. Thank you, John McLaughlin. That music means Big Jim Garrity is in the house with us. Garrity, the indispensable. Jim, as you are my cultural reporter, you write for the Washington Post, you write for National Review, you do the Three Martini podcast, you're often on the editor's podcast for National Review. So you're a man of culture. The Oscars were nominated. The nominations came out this morning. I'm looking for your reactions to the Best Picture, all right? Number 1, Frankenstein.
At least heard of that one, didn't see it, don't expect to see it.
Hamnet.
Okay, and I know that's not a typo. You're not mispronouncing it. It actually is an N, not an L. I have a vague, I remember seeing it on the box office display. Didn't see it.
The Secret Agent.
That actually sounds good, but I haven't seen it.
Sentimental Value.
You could be making up that one, and I would not be able to tell you whether it's true or not.
Not making it up. Wouldn't be prudent. Not going to do it. Wouldn't do it. Sinners.
Okay, heard of that one. Haven't seen it. Heard people raving about it. It's about vampires in the Old South. So that one I'm not surprised by. At least it permeated some, with Michael B. Jordan as opposed to the other Michael Jordan.
It received 16 Oscar nominations. F1.
Okay, actually saw that one.
So did I.
Yes, I really enjoyed it. Kind of almost felt like old-fashioned movie making. It's not a groundbreaking story, but just really done. And I saw it right around my birthday. And the theme is about, pursuing greatness, but also kind of passing the torch to the new generation. I'll be rooting for that one. I know it's never going to win, but like maybe
not
Brad
a chance.
Pitt
Brad Pitt's in it. It's not going to win. Yeah. Train Dreams.
Again, you could be making that up, and
no,
I'm
not. I'm not making it up. Not making it up. You haven't seen that?
No.
All right. Marty Supreme.
Okay, heard of that one. Heard people saying good things about it. Haven't seen it. Have only the vaguest idea of what it's about. Unlikely to see it.
I have seen it. They were lying to you. One battle after another.
Heard of that one. I hear from the likes of Kyle Smith, who used to be with us at National Review, now over at the Wall Street Journal, just insufferably overhyped and overdone, and the heavy-handed political metaphor and all that stuff. Leonardo DiCaprio, to his credit, throws himself into whatever role he's doing, but it's about Trump being bad. So I figured that'll be the big winner.
Oh, I didn't know that. Another reason not to see it. I'd heard of it, but now that I've heard you say that, I won't see it. And then Begonia.
Feel like I might have heard. So is this about the kidnapping of the CEO?
No idea. No, okay. Never heard of it. All right. So that's the list.
I have a vague familiarity with it. Yeah.
So I've seen F1 and Marty Supreme. I've seen 2 out of 10. I liked 1 out of 10, the one that can't win because Brad Pitt's in it. You've seen none? No, you did see F1. You've seen
F1.
1 out of 10.
Of them. Yeah.
And you've heard of Sinner. So
yes.
You've heard of one more than I've heard of. So what's that say about the movies, or what's that say about you, and what's that say about me?
Okay, well, what it says about me is that I generally see action movies, superhero movies, stuff like summer movie types, right? I am not the target audience for most Oscar bait. Doesn't mean I've never enjoyed them, but we all know what Oscar bait is. Where you're playing a character who's somewhat mentally challenged, and I won't use the line from that Robert Downey Jr. did.
No, don't use that line. No.
But nonetheless, the idea that often it's someone who's trying to stretch as an actor. Historical dramas, if you're playing some major
anything with Daniel Day-Lewis in it.
Yep. And if those movies are your taste, great. Very rarely have I seen a Oscar winner. Argo, I remember seeing a couple of years ago, which was
you've
got
robot kids. Do your robot kids go to the movies?
Not that often. We'll go see superhero movies. We actually felt pretty good about all three of the ones that came out this year: Superman, Fantastic Four, and Thunderbolts. We did not like the Captain America one. Did not work. We're of the general mainstream consensus that for a long time the Marvel movies were about as much fun as you could have in the theaters, and then they did Endgame. And it's been very hit and miss since then. But I
they're teenagers. I now have young grandchildren, so my movie options are very limited. I used to be, with the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt, a 2-film-a-week person. Even when my kids were in the house, we just loved movies. There aren't any movies, Jim. My point is that it's collapsed, and I think this list proves that. Am I making too much of a point of it?
I don't know if the Oscar selections are the most natural measuring stick, but what is indisputable is what they used to call the middle class of movies. Movies that had a budget from about $15 million to $100 million. A lot of comedies were in this category. A lot of romantic comedies were in this kind of category. This basically has disappeared. And that this was where, Will Smith in Hitch would be that kind of movie, with Kevin James or something like that, right? That there would be
Kevin Costner movie ever made.
Yes, exactly. A Western, that basically movies are either, small, independent, made with almost no money, or they are giant blockbusters that are designed to have a theme park at, Universal or Disney or something like that. And I think people miss these kind of movies.
The movies used to form the culture. And it was, my kids grew up on the movies. My grandkids both grew up on the movies. I think I took my daughter to see Titanic 10 times when she was 14 or 13. So we got a minute to the break. We'll come back after. I'll ask you something important. Are they dead by streaming and by consensus that the filmmakers have lost their mind, or is it just a bad couple of decades?
Quote Billy Crystal in The Princess Bride, he's only mostly dead. They're mostly dead because it now costs about $20 a head, at least where I am, to go to the movies. Like you, I'd see movies maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, but they only cost $7. The more the ticket costs, the more the movie's got to be good. The more the movie's got to be something where you feel really good from the trailer or the commercial, or you like the book or something like that. Yeah, it becomes a much bigger risk at $20 a head.
All right, I'm coming back with a technical question for Garrity because his kids build robots. And they're bound for the school in the Charles that actually learns things. Jim is my tech consultant. Jim, I have here my iPhone, which is many years old, with my Cleveland Browns orange on it. By the way, the Jets don't get a quarterback. Sorry, Dante Moore's going home rather than go to the Jets. And I'm going to go get a new one today. Can I say to the person at the Apple help desk, I'm sure this has been hacked and has malware on it. I want my contacts, I want my number, and I don't want any malware. Can they make that work?
Probably not, but they'll try to upsell you something with the much higher caliber spyware. You're not going to have, they're not going to have that basic spyware. We're going to give you the premium plus spyware with our additional subscription.
Are you telling me I got to get a new phone number in order to dump the spyware? Because we are talking to the Chi-Coms right now because it's in the studio. And I tell you, there's a reason it's not allowed into any building.
So second time that I was in Ukraine, I ran into Tim Mock, who writes a news site called The Counteroffensive. Great reporter. Everybody should follow him on Twitter, subscribe to his thing. And he said that, he goes through, he was in Ukraine, went to Taiwan. I think he was somewhere else like Kazakhstan or something. And they tell you, if you're going to places like this, your cell phone, you figure this is where they're most likely to try to get spyware in there, and they can do it remotely through wireless signals and stuff like that. So Tim Mock told us he's getting, he goes to some professional, high-grade caliber person who can find spyware by foreign intelligence or anybody else who's out there trying to put it onto your phone. And he goes, they do the full review, they do the scan, and he says it comes back clean. And he was so pissed. He was so disappointed that nobody thought he was worth listening in on. And I kind of feel that kind of way. I kind of feel like if you told my phone and you said, Jim, you've been to Ukraine a bunch of times, no Russian spyware. You've been to Taiwan, nothing Chinese. I'd feel a little insulted. I've been told by reliable sources that both of those countries' governments have a file on me. Now, it probably just means a file just means they have a paper. We don't like this guy. That's all that they actually have.
Look at what he wrote. No, Jim, I know I've got spyware. When people come to the house for dinner who are in the government, they make me put it downstairs under a bunch of wooden crates, and then I
believe that you interview the president fairly regularly. Now, I assume that when they're doing that, they not only scan all your recording equipment, they probably frisk you. I don't know if you feel like you've been to the proctologist. I'm just figuring it's like a full check whenever you're in the room.
But do the robot kids help? Do having robot kids help you figure this stuff out?
This is not really their specialty, but I will point out, I'm glad you mentioned it, Hugh, because we're now deep, early January is when they get the assignment. So my younger son, I'm just never going to get to see him until the first competition. They are building, they are designing, they got electrical stuff to worry about. I'll get to see him maybe a month from now. I'm spending
Do the lights ever flicker in the
house?
Do the power fail? Does the light flicker in the house at times?
Well, thankfully, they're not doing it here, but they're basically Northern
yes.
Virginia. If the power goes out. By the way, I'm fairly certain AI will become, sentient, and it's going to happen because of one of these robot projects.
Are you, by the way, 10 seconds? Do all the robot kids get together? What do they do for fun?
Oh, they're into this, and at some point, I may write an article that can make it to a world.
You need to write a book. You need to write a book called Robot Kids. There's your title.